Today we're looking at Proverbs chapter 6, and like I said, chapters 1 through 9 are again an introduction, a selling of the point, a reasons why wisdom and knowledge and understanding are very important. He's going back with this again, my son. He's talking about at the beginning here, if you take surety, if you get into a business relationship, if you make a vow, don't make foolish vows. Make sure you keep it as fast as you can. Keep your word. You will get ensnared by making all kinds of vows and not keeping them. It says to go humble yourself and make sure thy friend. Go ahead and make it sure. If you clasp hands with somebody, I'm going to do this. Then you go and make sure. He says, don't sleep or slumber. Deliver yourself from these connections. If you have made any kind of vows, deliver yourselves from vows unless they're ones that you know that you can keep. The business relationships or how I'm going to some sort of contractual labor going back and forth. Just make sure that you keep these. He goes, consider the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways. Having no guide or overseer ruler, she provides meat in the summer and gathers her food for the harvest. Talks about how that some people want to make vows as a way of a cheap way to make money, but consider the ant. You have to be diligent about your responsibilities and about the things that you're to do financially. Don't be lazy. He talks about a little bit of slumber, a little sleep, and poverty is at the door, and it comes after you like an armed man. Poverty overtakes you. It chases you down. It's like a tidal wave that chases you, or a snowstorm that gathers you around and tumbles you around. Talks about a haughty person, a wicked person, walketh with a froward mouth. You wink with the eye, and he speaks with his feet. He teaches with his fingers. He's sleight of hand. He's look here, look there. This is not something that you need to be a part of. It says calamity will come suddenly upon this person, and if you're in that kind of lifestyle, calamity will come upon you. I like this. You'll see this happen a lot. 6 things the Lord hateth, 7 things are an abomination. It's a very poetic way of saying, here are things that God hates. And so you can look at this: a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that does wicked, that runs after mischief, gives false witness, and sows discord, just spreads gossip and rumors and innuendo. And it says these are things are abomination. It's interesting in the church, we have certain things that we call abominable. It's an abominable to do this. This is an abomination. We're very strong about things that we call abominations. I made a list, and there's like a dozen things or more. A long list, almost 20 things that God finds abominable. And many of those we need to do. Sometimes we get caught when we hate one abomination, but we do another. It's called being a hypocrite. It talks about keeping thy father's commandment. It spends a lot of this chapter talking about this wayward woman, warning us again. We saw that in 5, and comes back talking about the whorish woman, talking about the adulterous woman. These women whose many times in that culture, the man would go off into the fields for hours at a time, sometimes on trips for days at a time, and use this woman at the house instead of taking care of her household and the maintenance. She's winking with her eyes. She's bringing in other lovers. She's making either money on the side, or she's doing this because she feels like she's free to do so. And you are just her food. By means of a whorish woman, a man is bought for a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for precious life. This woman is a hunter. She's hunting you. And it's interesting how it talks about how horrible that is. He that goeth after his neighbor's wife, whoever touches her, will not be innocent. Men do not despise a thief if they steal to satisfy his soul is hungry. But if he is found to be, he will restore sevenfold, and he will give all of his substance. But whoever committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding, and he that doeth it destroys your own soul. He talks about, for jealousy is the rage of the man. Therefore, he will not spare in the day of vengeance. The idea there is that if you do steal, there's a way out. You just repay. But when you do this one, there is no repaying. There's no way to make that right with a man, and a man will be jealousy. We see that a lot of time in our culture where men will fight with other men instead of blaming the woman. You shouldn't have slept with my wife, not my wife shouldn't have slept with you. Both parties are guilty, but the rage and jealousy, the man will take off on the other man. And it says that this man will not regard ransom, neither will he rest content although you give him gifts. There's no way to appease a man that's been wronged when you do this. He's warning you. This is what happens. Chapter 6 has a lot of warnings in it. Again, we should be wise. We should have understandings. We should have knowledge. But there is dangers. That's the reason why. This isn't just head knowledge for, just knowing, how the bees fly, or knowing relationships and patterns and stuff. It'll literally save your life. Here, you don't want to be involved with a jealous man. Going back to 2 Kings, interesting things are happening. We're seeing some changes happening. We're in chapter 8. In chapter 7 is where you had, in Samaria, there was a famine going on. And in one day, God flips it and then makes feast. The idea that there was a famine going on because of God, and even the king was cursing Elisha for it. But Elisha tells them, don't worry, tomorrow fine flour will be for a shekel. 2 measures of barley will be for a shekel. This one guy didn't believe it, and he wound up paying for it. You had the 4 lepers who went into the camp of the Syrians to give themselves up, hoping that maybe they could eat something, to find out that God had sent what sounded like a giant chariots and horses that scared this entire, we're looking at a multitude, could have been thousands of men, got so scared they ran off and left their tents, they left their horses, they left their mules, they left their stuff. They were so afraid. That's the power of these chariots that are coming around, and the sound of these hoof beats coming scared them, so they left. And they left all their stuff, and these 4 men, of course, gather it up and then go tell the king. He goes to take a look, and then the people go out. And in one day, the economy goes from famine, where they're eating, dove dung, to feast, where they have more than enough flour. God is able to do this, and he does this here. And he's doing this for sinful sinful Israel. Now, the obedient Israel, again, is still under Jehoshaphat. We find out later that Jehoram decides to follow the ways of Ahab. We'll see that later on. But right now, Asa was good, Jehoshaphat was good, and things are fine in the southern kingdom, but that's going to make a turn. Elijah tells of another famine coming in chapter 8. He warns the lady that the lady that he stayed with, who had the son, and then the son died, and he brought the son back to life. It's interesting that there's still an evidence, a testimony before the king. He goes and tells this woman that there's going to be famine for 7 years. You need to go someplace safe. So she goes to the Philistines. When she comes back, she decides she needs to go to the king because some of her land and her houses have been taken. And it's funny, at that time, the king is talking with Gehazi, and Gehazi is telling the story of a woman whose son had died, and Elisha had brought the son back to life. And at that moment, this woman comes in. I mean, this is a funny little story thrown in here. He's telling the story about this woman, and she walks in the door wanting to talk with the king about her land and the problem she has with her household, because she'd been gone for a while. And of course the king grants it. But that's an amazing coincidental story, which is kind of cool. We see God doing that from time to time. So that story's in here, and it's really cool. Elisha goes down to Damascus, and Benadab, remember, Benadab had been cursed. Ahab was supposed to kill Benadab, and he didn't. So now the house of Benadab has been going on. Remember, God had said that Hazael would become king in Syria, that Jehu would be king in Israel, and that Elisha would be the prophet. Both they have swords. The sinners that Hazael doesn't kill, Jehu will kill. And the sinners that Jehu doesn't kill, Elijah will be there with the sword. So again, we see the straightening up of this house. He's going to get rid of, he wants to root out the sin of Baal worship and foreign god worship, but also he needs to remove the house. This house of Ahab is supporting this. Jezebel has over 400 prophets of these foreign gods that she supports. She feeds them and takes care of them. She bankrolls, if you will, their religion, and their religion is horrible. It's baby murder and the murder of innocent life. It's the destruction of laws. It's destruction of the economy. It is weakness, and then you have your enemies around you that start preying on you. You've got, highwaymen. You've got thieves on the roads. You've got traffickers, human traffickers. Horrible things happening. It just gets worse and worse. You've got abortion. You've got sodomy. All these things are going on. It's creating, and all of these things are abominations to Israel. This is the same Israel that was obedient in the times of David, when it made David king, and was obedient in the times of Solomon. It's the same people, but now they've turned completely away from God. And he is working hard. Remember with Carmel. Remember with he chased out the Syrians. He rose up Abinadab just so that the northern kingdom could see how powerful God is. He's done these literal miracles among the people, so the people would know about a Jehovah God who cares. I care if you lose your axe handle. I care if your son is dead. I care if you're eating porridge in a pot that will make you sick. I care if you don't have good drinking water. So this is what God is doing, really throwing down the goodness of who he is in a place that wants to have nothing to do with him. So we see in chapter 8, Benadab is sick, and he goes to see Elijah, and he sends a message, sends Hazael. Remember, Hazael was the one that was supposed to become king, and Hazael and Elijah tells him he could recover from this, but he's going to die. And that's exactly kind of what happens. He's not saying you're going to die of this disease. You could recover from this disease, but you're going to die. So Hazael also sees that Elisha is weeping. Elijah is weeping. There's some emotion here. He goes, why are you weeping? Because I know that you're going to come into Israel and that you're going to turn down the strongholds and that you're going to kill young men with fire and you're going to dash the children and rip the women up that are with child. You're going to do these horrible things. And he goes, no, why would I do this? And he goes, he tells him that he's going to become king. And so he goes back to talk with Benadab. But there's a prophecy here of what Hazael is going to do to Israel because of the sins of Israel and the sins of the house of Ahab. Again, God is just. Remember we talked about the king in Judges that lost his thumbs and his toes. He goes, hey, but I did this to 10 kings. Things that are happening here that he's going to have Hazael do is what Israel is doing to the neighbors around them. And so here we have this is happening. God isn't going to have something happen to you. He has to have equity and justice. As you've sown, so shall you reap. As you've done, so will have done unto you. And so we're going to see that it's very sad that this is going to happen, but it's also because in response to, in the name of Yahweh, they're doing these horrible things. They're known as the people of Yahweh, the people of Jehovah, and yet they're doing these horrible things. And so now this is going to happen to them in judgment by Hazael. And so it comes to the pass that he goes and sees Benadab, and he tells Benadab he'll recover, but then turns around and kills Benadab and takes over. So he begins to reign. We have a change of guard here. He begins to reign, and we have Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, starts to reign more properly. He's starting to step into his own. He's starting to step into his kingdom, but he doesn't follow his grandfather Asa or his father Jehoshaphat. He becomes like the house of Ahab, because it says here, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife. Remember, Ahab's son was running the show. Jehoram was running the show in the northern kingdom, and Jehoram's sister or stepsister was now the wife of Jehoram in the southern kingdom. This is the house moving into the southern kingdom. It's a very sad thing. And he starts listening to his wife. He starts following not his father or grandfather, but the ways of the house of Ahab. And so he does this. And the Lord also brings up, during his days, Edom revolted, and there was another place that revolted, so they had to deal with foreign conflict. But the Lord wasn't about to destroy Judah. He says here, for David his servant's sake, and he promised him that there would always be a light to his children. But Edom raised itself up, and Jehoram went and rose at night and smote the Edomites, and also Libnah rose up, and the axe of Joram and Joram slept with his fathers and was buried, and his son Ahaziah becomes king after him. So he has kind of a short-lived reign, or his reign isn't really given a lot of time here. So he revolts, and the rest of acts are recorded in the kings of Judah. And he slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers, and Ahaziel his son reigned in his stead. In the 12th year of Joram son of Ahab did Ahaziel, Jehoram of Judah, start to reign. So even with Jehoram in the north still reigning, the Jehoram in the south doesn't reign very long, and now his son Ahaziah comes into play. So you have now those two kings. But he's following also the house of Ahab, because it says that his mother's name was Athaliah. We'll see her come up later. She becomes like a Jezebel light. Many of the things she does is very much like Jezebel. She is the daughter of Omri, king of Israel. Now stop. Omri was Ahab's dad. So this makes his mother is the daughter of Omri, so that's like a stepdaughter to Ahab. So again, you have the household of Ahab now down in the south. In this second generation of kings, Joram had married the daughter of Ahab, and now a sister of Ahab, sorry. Joram had married a sister of Ahab, and now he marries a daughter of Omri, which is, a sister of Ahab. So we're still in the family of Ahab. The daughter and the sister are now married to the two kings. One of the kings has passed on. So Athaliah, his mother's name, Athaliah is the mom of Ahaziah, who is now the king. So he's got his mom is a sister. So that kind of makes him a grandchild of Ahab, if you want to look at it that way, in the family. Maybe a great cousin or something like that, grand cousin or something. They're still a familiar thing. The house is still living in the south. And he walked in the ways of the house of Ahab and did evil in the sight of the Lord, as did the house of Ahab. For he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. So that's what I'm trying to explain, that he was a son-in-law to the house of Ahab. We have this familiar connection. We're stepping away from the godliness of Asa and Jehoshaphat, and we're going into ungodliness of the family of Ahab on his mother's side. And so Jehoram, son of Ahab, went to war with Ahaziah. So now the sword of justice is now in place in Syria. We're going to see in chapter 9 tomorrow how the sword of Israel will get put in instead of Jehoram. And we already have the sword of Elisha ready. So we're having these three swords getting set up to take care of sin, to take care of this house, and to move things back, at least attempt to work hard to move things back into the way that Jehovah wants. So we see these things going into play. So Jehoram went and battled with Ahaziah, and he became wounded. So he went back to Jezreel, and he fought against Ahaziah king, and Ahaziah the son of Jeroram of Judah went down to see Joram the king, son of Ahab, in Jezreel. Let me straighten that out a little bit. Is that the king of the north went to fight the king of Syria, and he got wounded. Then the king of Judah went up to see the king of Israel in Jezreel. So, so some of these names get everything, you have to remember which Joram you're talking about. And here's Ahaziah. Some of this can get a little confusing, but to make it more simply, the northern king went to fight the Syrian sword, and he got wounded, and he goes back to Jezreel. Then the southern king, which is of the same house, goes up. So again, the relationship here, which could work out, is somebody is going to his sister's daughter's husband, who is the king. So it's kind of got this family relationship here, to where his mother's daughter or stepdaughter is now married to the king. So he's got that little relationship going, and now he goes up to see Joram in the northern kingdom, who's in Jezreel. The story continues tomorrow, but to set these chess pieces in play, God is moving these political chess pieces around so that he might root out the house of Ahab, to root out the sin, and to give the people a chance. But the people are choosing to sin. This is also a problem. Israel can't say, well, I'm sinning because of my government, because of my king. No, they're following their king, but not all. Remember that God told Elijah there's 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. It's very possible in the northern kingdom there were a lot of good people. Not every soul was following. Maybe they had their familiar reasons to be there. Also in the south, not every soul, obviously. I mean, as soon as Ahaziah opens the door for the sin in the house of Ahab, it gets embraced by the people in Judah. So let's remember that we're dealing with not a lot of black and white here, but God's trying to root out sin and he's trying to destroy a house. And tomorrow we'll see the establishment of Jehu and the sword of Jehu and the sword of Ahaziah, and then here comes the sword of Elisha to bring about judgment, justice, and hopefully some repentance along the way to reestablish God in Judah and in Israel. So to be continued. It really gets good. Thank you.